Welcome to the Talking Toughness series of podcasts, where we examine the mental toughness concept with guests from a wide range of sectors, illustrating that our mental approach to what happens to us and around us matters for all of us. Our guests come from the worlds of business and public service, education, social mobility, sport, and health. They all share their experiences and their observations about the factors that have enabled them to survive and to thrive on their journey through life. Many guests have gone further and incorporated the concept into what they do as coaches, trainers, managers, and leaders, helping others to thrive in their turn. Their experiences are valuable to those of us who strive to do the same. Our guest today may not yet be known to all, but that's only a matter of time. Originally a civil engineer, William McKee developed a passionate interest in people development to become a coach with a truly enviable record of accomplishment. But what marks William apart from other practitioners is his concern for the integrity of the profession and the tools and models that are used, and very much his preparedness to speak out and to challenge those ideas and materials which are less than reliable. It is well known that many of the most popular models and instruments in use today are little more than fads, and that most have little or no independent objective evidence behind them. And yet many practitioners will still use them. In William's own words, he is not so keen on all of the pseudoscience and daft ideas permeating the worlds of L&D, OD, HR, and people development. Revealing his civil engineering origins, he observes that he wouldn't build a bridge using unproven, unsound material. Why would you try to build people with anything less than this? This is a fabulous discussion, maybe uncomfortable for some, but genuinely thought-provoking for everyone, and in a good way. Hello, William, and welcome to our podcast. We're really pleased to have you here. So, how are you today?
I'm doing well, thank you, for Thursday, Wednesday.
And
See,
from what I see
that's the
this
sign that
morning,
someone's got young kids.
That sounds good. Yeah, absolutely.
I feel your pain.
and from what I see on the weather forecast this morning, you're going to get better weather in Scotland than we are in England for a change.
Happens once a century, I'm told.
So, William, one of the things that we've noticed about you is you're quite prepared to be vociferous about the upsides and downsides of psychometric measures, and particularly the way that people use them or believe in them. I think it'd be useful to, first of all, learn what took you to this. What's your journey to being so interested in psychometrics and in the integrity of psychometrics?
Mhm. So I was a civil engineer, probably about 13 or 14 years ago now. And I worked for a highways agency, and I met a company that did negotiation training, and I just absolutely fell in love with what they did. Thought it was absolutely fascinating. They took a very psychological approach, and then I went to work for them, and kind of moved into the field of people development and all that kind of stuff. Retrained as a business psychologist, so did a master's, all that kind of good stuff, and then went to work for a couple of other consultancies, again in the field of kind of people, organizational performance, a bit around recruitment, all that kind of stuff. Went freelance in 2019, just in time for the pandemic, and then now I do most of my work through 3 or 4 associate relationships. I'm also qualified executive coach. I've taught at a business school. I've done a few other bits and pieces. Where I got really interested in psychometrics was probably thinking about my own development and just doing a little bit of research, because going from like a civil engineer to whatever I am just now, there were different choices along the path about where to put some tokens into professional development, what badges to get, all that kind of stuff. And so one of the badges was some sort of personality profiling tool, and I knew nothing about it. And I bought a book on MBTI, and I think the book was called Gifts Differing or something like that. It was all very, very nice.
I've got a copy here.
Have you got a copy? Yeah. I don't know where my copy is. It might have ended up in the fireplace at some point, but more about that later. And but I very nearly pulled the trigger on becoming like an MBTI practitioner. I think I read an article in like 2015, 2016, and it might have been like Psychology Today or something like that, and it was like MBTI, the fad that won't die.
Yeah.
Something like that. There's an article out there like that. That might be more recent, but there was definitely an article way back then. And it just kind of pointed out that from a statistical perspective, MBTI is no better than a horoscope. And I think the kind of civil engineer left in me, that kind of, a relative degree of comfort with statistics and maths and bits and pieces like that, started to get a bit curious. I think I'm also sort of just naturally quite skeptical. And my exploration of the leadership and management development industry, the people development industry, coaching, everything like that is, to my horror, a lot of the ideas that I came into contact with, when you give them a bit of a nudge, they fall over. In terms of, it'll just be someone that's got a very charismatic personality that sat down one day and written a book. And it's not to say that that kind of wisdom isn't valuable. It's just to say it's got to be caveated as a sample of one. And it might not be the whole picture. So that's kind of shaped where I've got to. And effectively, just the more I poke and prod at things, the more horrified I am to find the not just the lack of credible research that sits behind things, but also sometimes the obfuscation around research. So I do believe there's like a degree of cynicism from some of the vendors of these kind of things, that they make things look more credible than they are. And I think, well, either that is just fluke, or it's by design. And so from a kind of ethical perspective, I don't like the idea of people, if I think back to my younger self, almost pulling the trigger on a course to go and become accredited and joining a club. I don't like the idea of someone in that position being sort of hoodwinked. And very often when I have conversations with people that have been qualified into certain tools, their foundational understanding of what makes a good psychometric is missing. So I did the BPS A and B, or 1 and 2, whatever it is now, the occupational test user, and one, the ROTAP, whatever it's called. I did that at Cambridge Judge Business School with Professor John Rust, and that was like, pretty, what would you say, dense. Like, it maybe wasn't the most fun week. There wasn't a lot of sort of floor mats and different colors and all this stuff getting kicked around, but it was just an incredibly good grounding in psychometric and test theory.
Yeah, and I'm interested there, William, but you almost kind of fell into that trap. So what is it then that means that, so MBTI wasn't even developed by psychologists, no. It was developed by a couple of crime novelists, had no grounding in theory, nothing. And working in academia, I would see a year, I would see a total of 0 papers use MBTI, because it's just not it's not a psychological theory. It doesn't exist in psychology. It just exists in like this sort of in this practice world. But you almost went there. And why do you think so many people then buy into it?
Well, I think that's, how long have you got? Rein me in. I think there's a huge number of reasons. I think one of them is simply just, caveat emptor, like buyer beware. Why would anyone think that, like if I go to Tesco and I buy a packet of sausages, it's not unreasonable to expect the packet to contain sausages. And so I think, if you look on a website and they say we sell a profiling tool, it's not unreasonable to think that is a profiling tool. And I think there's a very good argument to make that some of these don't even meet the basic definition of a profiling tool. So, and as you say, John, zero, when I was doing my dissertation for the psychology masters, next year I'm going to be doing a dissertation for a master's in executive coaching. I will not be able to use the 5 most popular profiling tools in industry, say, because they are just completely without merit when it comes to academic work. And sometimes practitioners in industry hide behind that and say, well, the academics can hide in their ivory towers and whatever. But by academic work, all I mean is like accurate and true. Yeah. So publishing a paper that contains truth or statistical accuracy, they simply don't. That's why no one uses them to publish any kind of research. So why do people fall for it? One, I think the companies that sell these less than effective tools don't exactly say that on the front of the website. Hey, by the way, this profiling tool is not accurate. That is occasionally the mask slips with the odd blog and things like that. Like I have seen that where there was one of these companies published a blog and it had sort of comparisons with different tools, and then it had sort of our tool, no predictive validity, this other approach, high predictive validity, and it's like and I think that blog very quick, I think it only lasted about 6 months on the website.
Oh yeah, that was the like X percentage of people of this have changed within a year.
No, that's still up. That's still up.
Oh,
so
that one's still there.
I posted about that, and that's absolutely hilarious because literally on the same page you've got some verbiage about how reliable the tool is, and then further down you've got something saying like whatever it is, 60% of people change their profile within 6 months. It's like, so how that is contradictory to the definition of reliability.
Yeah, which is consistency.
But what they've done, which I think is absolutely hilarious, tragic, and on one level I just applaud the brass neck. They have turned that, which would be on any other day of the week an indictment of the tool, into a reason to push more product. Our tool is so bad that your results don't matter and will change over a short period of time, but give us more money. Do the tool again. You think so. I think at the core of some of these vendors is just an incredibly commercially aggressive mindset. And I think that mindset is often missing in academia, and that's why the high quality, robust, well-researched tools are well-kept secrets.
Yeah, I think you've raised a good point there about the packaging and the content. And you look at somebody we all know, Professor Rob Briner. He talks about faddism, and I think we also see faddism. People will look at the term psychometric measures. I've either got an advantage or a disadvantage here. I'm much older than you and John, and probably older than you and John combined, perhaps. But I was originally trained by Peter Saville, right? And I mean, we are talking very early 80s. And at that time, psychometrics was almost unknown. And I'm not blaming Saville and Holsworth for this, but they made it very sexy. It suddenly exploded, and everybody was interested in psychometric measures. And of course, they launched OPQ, which is a big 5 measure, which is not a bad measure. And everybody jumped on the bandwagon. I remember dealing with OPP, who were then the distributors for MBTI. There's only 4 people in the company, and now it's a corporation. So suddenly, I think faddism took over. People said, "Oh wow, this is something new. This is new technology coming into people in organizational development, and we must have it." But the nice thing about Peter Saville is I spent 2 weeks with him doing the level A and level B program. And at the end of it all, he said, "Would you like to know about MBTI?" I could teach you all you need to know about MBTI in 2 hours, and he did. But he was quite, it's interesting to work with somebody like him who understood psychometrics, who understood had a grounding in psychology, and could point out all the flaws in the concept. So I think faddism has got a big part to play. And I don't think people know what questions to ask. Will you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. On days where I'm feeling mischievous, I sometimes post things on LinkedIn, and I mean nothing bad by this. I really don't. I think I really try and rein myself in, but I think that sometimes it's like that thing about the emperor's new clothes.
Yeah.
And sometimes I just go over threshold and I just think, hang on a minute here, there's someone naked flapping their bits in my face here, and I don't appreciate it. And so I see all this stuff. I get emails from people about, hey, I've just become accredited in this. I'm doing a discount, blah blah. And it sometimes makes me want to scream, because I think, hang on a minute here, some basic questions here like reliability and validity. Just basic psychometric properties or test theory, but it's not being taught. It's not being taught on these kind of practitioner courses and things like that. The other dynamic that I think is really interesting is that sometimes, so I wish it was a fad. I really like what you're saying there, but I wish it was a fad. I just think it's been around. How long does something have to be around before it's no longer a fad? It's I don't know what you would call it. It's become, yeah. It's kind of well and truly got its roots stuck in, and it's perennial. It just keeps popping up. I mean, I think sometimes the lens of personality and psychometrics and things like that is the wrong lens to look at this phenomenon through, because we're all interested in that kind of thing. I think it's just simply like a business problem, like the professional bodies. So again, like I don't really want to say anything career limiting, but I will. I do stuff that's ILM accredited, CMI accredited, university accredited. I've taught on a master's at business school. None of those institutions set the standard and say, look, we are putting a line in the sand. This is what a good psychometric is. This is what a bad psychometric is for these reasons. They all have in them that it's fine to use anything. So until the professional bodies raise the standards, there's no incentive for people not to use these things. From that perspective, the other perspective is like, I watched a really good webinar a couple of weeks ago on brand building and business building. And what this chap was saying was, when you are early in building your business, what you do is, like, a brand is effectively just making associations. And so what he was saying was, if I think about me 5 years ago when I was going freelance, well, who am I? I'm nobody, and I don't have a brand. But here is a large multinational organization that looks like it's at the top of its game when it comes to people and profiling and all this kind of stuff. And for the reasonable sum of whatever it is, I can go on a 3-day course, and then I can have their brand, and I can have their brand in all my marketing. I can have their brand in my email signature. I can have all that kind of stuff. So I think there's a lot of people who are simply trying to build their business, trying to do a good job, and it's a very seductive value proposition from these organizations. And along comes some numpty like me that says, well, is there anything? Just send me a link to one published research paper on that backs up what you're saying. And they don't want to hear it, because they're already $2,500-3,000 in the pocket for their 3-day course. It's all over their emails. They've already started talking to their customer base about it and stuff like that. So I'm just ranting at you now. I'm sorry, but this is like, that's one thing I
think. I'm pleased to hear it, because we don't hear it very often. So like my own reflections, if we would have done a few kind of workshops and talks and stuff like that, where I might do a presentation to coaches on sort of psychometric measures and kind of things to look for. And I think I can normally divide the room into sort of those who have a bit of knowledge and are kind of interested in it. There's those who the reason they're there is because they don't have that knowledge, but they really do want to have some credibility and integrity in what they're doing, and that's why they're sat there in the first place. But then I've no doubt there are those as well that think, I don't care, I just need to be able to sell it. And it was funny. I did just before we came on, I had the University of Limerick sort of library page open in front of me anyway, so I thought just pick up a couple of the main databases, PsycArticles and PsycInfo, and just search for like MBTI and validity. And for every peer-reviewed article ever published in English, I can find one that supports its validity, and it supports what they call face validity.
Right. Yeah.
So that's not numbers. That's people look at it and go, yeah, that seems, and that is the kind of thing with these, like, yeah, I'm a bit of an EFNJ, or like, oh yeah, you're such a blue person, you're such a Samantha, like that kind of that face validity. I can kind of, you can see the attraction, because I think that's why people often get into psychology, because you end up with, oh, I like that I can kind of see a bit of myself in that. And I suppose that's quite alluring, that it sort of blinds us a little bit to going, oh, hang on, shall I just open up the bonnet a little? I think it's really interesting when you're explaining the civil engineering background. I had this kind of like image developing in my head of like an architect coming along with an amazing looking bridge or something, and you're going, wow, that'd look great. Think what that'd do for the skyline. Should we check the guy's workings? Nah, don't need engineers. We've got the architects. It's fine. Yeah. So yeah, there's no question in that. I'm just that's
no, but that's exactly
on the back of your rant.
We can always just rant about. No, I mean, but that's exactly it. I mean, like, there's no prisoners taken, and there are mistakes. I mean, don't get me wrong. There was a bridge that collapsed in the States. Was that a couple of years ago now, and stuff like that. And there's some quite interesting stuff written about how the design process and the construction process got itself to that point. But I would say, generally speaking, there aren't, you don't take prisoners when you're looking at aspects of engineering, because, if you make bad decisions about how you construct something, it's going to be of serious risk to people. I think the risks with psychometrics are less tangible. There's two things in what you said. One is Barnum effect. And we could have a chat about the Barnum effect, and again, just how completely not talked about the Barnum effect is. And that's that face validity and things like that. Even just like language around validity, different types of validity, construct validity, all this kind of stuff. But yeah, I mean, that's one thing that's really interesting. But the other thing that's really interesting is the damage done. And so, like, the idea that there are, while you can always talk about benefits, you have to be aware of risks and downsides and damage. And again, that's a conversation that's just never seems to be brought up, which is, what are the risks of introducing people to a way of thinking about people that may not be accurate? And because the common refrain that I get from a lot of people is, well, these tools don't have to be reliable and valid. They just promote conversations. There's one company, I'm going to try and not name names, because I do think at some point they'll probably send me a lawyer's letter. I mean,
we'll let it out anything.
All right, okay.
A
lot of beeps there every time I mention the name of the vendor, but they say things like, this is a tool to help people develop self-awareness. And I think that is the ultimate hiding place, because you can never, there are all these well-established ways of testing a survey. And what they're saying is, we're not really going to engage in any of that. We're just going to say, well, this is just about developing self-awareness. And I really like the Hitchens razor, that which can be stated without evidence can be dismissed without evidence. And I say, if you're putting forward that premise that this tool is helping develop self-awareness, I'd like to see some receipts. Otherwise, my position is just, no, sorry, I'm not going to believe you automatically and uncritically.
I suppose a couple of things that spring to mind there is, like, so from an ethical point of view, where do you draw the line? So if I had a diagnostic test to see if someone was on autism spectrum disorder or personality disorder or something like that, do I say, yeah, but I mean, it's just conversation starters.
Yeah.
Like self-awareness that you might have a disorder that needs treatment and will completely change the course of your future mental health. But sure, it's a conversation starter, self-awareness, right? No.
Yeah. So these are powerful things that are being deployed and played with. not even necessarily by their nature, but by their effect. So I have umpteen conversations with people in organizations where, when you go on the official website or you talk to people that are sort of well in the cult, they'll say things like, well, it should never be used for that. And it's like, but hang on. So what you're saying is you're going to introduce people to a profiling tool, but it should never be used to make decisions about people. Don't be so naive. The number of organizations, I think you mentioned somebody that's coming on the podcast in a couple of months. He pointed out a really interesting article a couple of years ago I can't remember where it is, but it was and I also can't remember the institution, but it was like a hospital somewhere that was using one of these tools to allocate people to different teams.
Mm.
And in fairness, the thing says on its website you shouldn't use it in recruitment, although they've started to edge into that and stuff like that. And it's like, but okay, but I mean, that's like me saying, like, here's a knife. Don't cut anything with it. It's just for display.
Yeah, but that's we come across lots and lots and lots of examples of people using ipsative measures for selection and recruitment decisions, and that's we've spoken about reliability and validity, and people don't really understand that, but they don't understand the difference between ipsative and normative either. So once you understand what an ipsative measure is, the kind of comments that we get that we struggle to deal with is they'll say, I completed such and such a measure and it was so accurate. And we say, well, the questions were designed to capture your opinion about you and feed it back to you. So you will think it's accurate.
Yeah.
Like a horoscope.
Yeah, exactly.
And the thing that, and like, I think normative scoring is important to try and sort of place it in context, but it's a necessary condition if you sort of to understand because rather than trying to place someone in a box, so it's not sufficient to say it's a good tool, but it can be necessary for its utility and its applied use. So I like normative tools that maintain like a scale variable. So it might, whether it's percentiles or something based on that. So it's not necessarily to make a judgment or put you into category. So anyone with an interest in statistics would say, why would you take a scale variable and reduce it down to a nominal categorical variable? Because that's less powerful, which is why I find it bizarre that, there's, again, something that I didn't really know from an academic point of view, and still until I started going into the practical world, that apparently there's only 16 types of people on the planet. I was shocked to learn that.
4 colours.
We didn't learn that when we did personality and individual differences.
4 colours, we don't even have to go to 16 degrees of difference. We only have to say there's 4 colours, so we can get it right down to 4 varieties of human being.
Well, and that's the kind of bit that this typing, this boxing thing, that's what kind of reminds me of the horoscopes. It might, because like I share a birthday with Mike Tyson, right? So we're the same. We're the same sort of zodiac sign. And I always think with the horoscopes that you can look at it and go like, I wonder if that means that me and Mike Tyson are having a pretty similar day. And everyone else who's Cancer on the planet. And I can't help but think like, well, surely if I'm green or if I'm EFNJ or whatever other things they are, like, does that mean that the quarter of the planet, the other near 2 billion people that share it are all having a similar sort of experience, share similar traits, and the thing that they find, and this I think it's where people get so bought into an idea that sometimes we forget. We almost undersell our own intelligence. Most people I've met who are coaches are thoughtful individuals. That's why they're interested in that. They're reflective. Yet sometimes it can elude them when they're kind of really invested in a particular model or measure. You don't step back and go like, well, hang on, does this make sense? Because if I'm meeting people in my job, day to day, I think, God, I've never met the same sort of person twice. Right? People are so complex. People are so different. And the more I talk to someone, the more I can uncover incredible complexity about that person. Yet, here's a tool that goes, you're this box. Right?